Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today is a nice and early Sunday morning. My name is Paladin, and welcome to Paladin's Archives. This is the second episode in a long series of episodes about how to get your dungeon mastering skills to the next level. This is going to be a weekly series that I'm going to be doing every Sunday exactly at this time, where I'm going to be here talking about how to get exactly from where you are from the beginner level all the way to the grandmaster level. It's going to take quite a long time and a lot of content to go through, but nonetheless. Now, I think the last time that we streamed for this was 2 weeks ago. Last week I was sick, so I wasn't able to stream. Apologies about that. But we're going to continue right where we left off, which if you were a part of the last stream, we were talking about the fundamentals, and one of them was how to create a homebrew campaign. And so I wanted to go through that process with you all today. And so I will be using the Gygax 75 challenge. And so it is we'll see it here in a minute, but before anything else, we talk about some announcements. So if you have been following along, then you probably already know, but this week is going to be the start of the playtests that are going to happen. And so myself, Chaotic and Writer, and Lion are all three of us going to playtest 3 of the ancestries from the Asalia setting and module that we are writing. And so that starts on Wednesday for me. And so I'm going to be running 6 different times in 6 different groups. If you want to know more details on like when and how to join, then by all means, you can join the Discord. There is a lot of material on the announcements. You can also message me directly as well. Other than that, there has been a major change with the Patreon. So the Patreon is now fit more closely to what it is that I do on a weekly and even on a daily basis. So that way you can get stuff like adventures that I'm going to be writing, 1 adventure every single month, or playing in games that I'm running, whether it's for the Archives Adventures or the monthly games. You can check all of that out. There are panels below on Twitch, and on YouTube there are also links in the description. So you're more than welcome to check it out. If anything, you can follow the Patreon for free, and there are a lot of maps and assets you can have as well. So other than that, let's see, the monthly adventure for this month is Gob's Petulance. So it is an adventure that I had ran before last year, many times actually. And so I took all of those playtest notes and I formulated it together in order to create the refined final version that it is now, which is going to be a published adventure. It is a story of a village named Gob, full of goblins, and there is a travesty that has befallen them. Party has to go and help them out and discover something a lot bigger waiting for them. So, but that is going to be streamed this Saturday evening. So it's going to be the very last group that I'm running, Group 6. It's at 7 p.m. for me, so that's 8 p.m. Eastern. It's going to go for about 3 to 4 hours, and it's going to be 3 sessions. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But anyway, so that's everything that I have for now. Let's go ahead and get right into what we are here for, which is writing a homebrew setting together. So I'm going to change the scene. Boop. There we go. Nice. Everything looks a lot nicer and cleaner. I worked some on the overlay, and I'm really excited about it. So let's just hop right into what we're going to be doing. So the Gygax 75 challenge, it was a rather lengthy title that was written by Gary Gygax back in 1975. Someone had found it and basically had rewritten it, put it together, and now we can see it. Now this resource is free. You can find it online if you just Google it, and you can download it. I have my own version here that I printed on very thick paper, so that way whenever I need a little bit of help getting a brand new setting, I have my materials right here. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna go through the document, and it says that it takes about 5 weeks in order to create a whole campaign setting, but it can be done quicker, especially if you have a lot of experience. But for us, we're not going to take 5 weeks, but we'll try to get as far as we can, at least getting through some of the basics. We'll see how far we get for today. We might continue it next week, but we'll see how far we get. So let's kind of go through piece by piece here. So the Gygax 75 challenge: create a usable RPG campaign setting in 5 weeks. So I really do like the styles of these old school drawings. They're very neat. I find them to be very, very unique. All right, so table of contents. How to use this book. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, of course. So let's just go right. Ooh, I like that. We'll go right to the introduction. So the introduction says how to set up your Dungeons and Dragons campaign and be stuck refereeing it 7 days per week until the wee hours of the morning. The rather descriptive and lengthy title appeared at the top of an article written by Gary Gygax for the April 1975 wargaming newsletter Europa. Gary's how-to article suggested a 5-step process that is both interesting and practical. I'm not sure it has been improved upon much in the intervening decades of gaming. Though helpful as advice, Gary speaks in a pretty broad terms. In this workbook, I have broken down his advice into creative prompts and achievable tasks that will help you develop a campaign setting over the course of just 5 weeks. I have also taken the liberty of reproducing the original article in its entirety in the back of this booklet. A scan of the original is available at the Internet Archive. This article was advertised as part of a series. I have been unable to locate part 1 as of this date. Part 3, First Adventures in Dungeoneering, contains minimal advice for running a session and a short sample of play. You can read it at gygaxlegendarium.blogspot.com, and using this workbook, you will establish a setting concept and pitch, develop a basic map for early explorations, and create a dungeon of several levels, detail a sizable nearby town, and begin the process of expanding your world. You are allowed 1 week, no more and no less, for each step. That may sound a bit overwhelming, but don't overthink it. Just get started. And yeah, sometimes the hardest part of just getting onto a project is just starting it or really beginning it, especially whenever it's something new that a person hasn't done before. And so really the best way to just, get good at something is just to really just get down and get started with it, no matter how good or bad it might be. But we'll go ahead and skip over to the next part, how to use this book. So you want to start your very own campaign, yes. Perhaps this is your first world building impulse and you don't know where to start. Or maybe you have tried to build out a setting before and gotten overwhelmed. This section answers some of the basic questions and fears that may in your way. If you are an old hand at world building, this section will help set your expectations correctly. I can't make a whole world in just a few weeks. That is correct. And I will say that even though myself and the other 2 authors have been working on Astalia for 2 months, there's still so much more we haven't even touched on. And so even with this, with what I'm going to be doing with you all today, we can only do so much in a little amount of time, but we'll try to do our best. But that is correct. It's a creative exercise, a way to get a campaign started. Hopefully it is just the beginning of something much larger. The results you get from working through the exercises each week will neither be perfect nor complete, and they shouldn't be. And it's true. Whenever I try to create any sort of setting or a new adventure, I try to leave it as open as possible. It is possible to write yourself too much into a corner, and then you're just like, oh no, where do I go? Or maybe writing so far in advance that that you kind of see that what you made ends up being lost as players decide to go an entirely different way. And so rather having a loose structure or a very open framework ends up working best, because then you can fill in as things go, and as the world gets solidified and play tested, then you can start having things be a lot more cemented. But even then, it is good to not have everything be entirely decided, and keeping things open for interpretation or for players to put their ideas in as well. But anyway, continuing on. The intent is for you, the GM, to develop the basic ideas and one small area of a new campaign world. Then to stay a few paces ahead of the players, building the world out in the direction of their interests and needs as they telegraph them to you in play. Yep, I think that's pretty much how I think I just had explained it. And so really starting from the smallest pieces is what this is gonna kind of help us through, like the creative process of how do you generate a well-formulated idea, put it together, and then go forward with it. And I think that as I've created adventures in the past before, what I realized is trying to maintain or create an overall vision of the world and what it is that the world is supposed to feel or be like really helps out a lot, because those are the defining pillars or the defining feeling or atmosphere that I am trying to create something towards. And so if I see that that I get stuck at a certain part, or maybe I get really excited about an idea, then I can compare those things or what is happening or the things that I've created to my central pillars, and I can more or less decide, like, is this something that I would want to add? Does it fit with my general world design? Yes or no? And then I can deter them one way versus the other. And it really helps out a lot if, especially when you're newer to making a campaign setting, to decide like, is this something that I want to add? Is this something that adds to the thing that I'm trying to go for? And so it really helps a lot with choice paralysis, especially whenever people have a ton of ideas, but they either don't know how to implement it with what they've already made, or trying to say like, I'm not really sure if this is something I want to add because it seems cool, but is it really something that I should add? So having a central vision and trying to keep to that vision does help, but also not being so stuck to the vision that it can't be revised over time. Anyway, so let's continue on. What if I fall behind? No one is standing over you with a headman's axe. At the end of each week, if you aren't finished, simply highlight the task you didn't achieve and or make a quick list of things you still want to do. Then move on. There will be time to revisit the loose ends from earlier weeks after the final week. I've heard that Ernest Hemingway stopped writing each day in the middle of a sentence. Not because he ran out of ideas, but because he knew exactly how he intended to finish that sentence. When he sat back down at his typewriter the following day, there was no agonizing over where or how to begin. No blank page syndrome. He just finished the sentence and kept going. The loose ends you leave behind will give your project energy and serve as scaffolding or spurs for future construction. Don't think of them as things you didn't get done. Think of them as opportunities. One of the keys to just about any creative effort is to make multiple passes over your material, each time layering on fresh ideas or adding the clarity that comes with hindsight. As you return to these loose end opportunities, you will find things coming into focus that were previously hazy. You may also find that you now have the perfect ideas with which to fill the holes you left behind. You will find that your world becomes richer and richer as you incorporate ideas from actual play events or newly discovered sources of inspiration. What if I want to work ahead? Don't. That's exactly what we're doing. We're speedrunning the whole thing. You know what? I'm not gonna listen to that. So let's see. But there's a fair point here. It takes a lot of time and energy and a lot of focused energy in order to really put all of this together. What we're going to be doing today is just going to be a little bit of the whole thing, but we'll touch on the high points and try to get as far as we can. So what materials do we need? Really, you need a book, something to write with, somewhere to keep your ideas down, and then that's pretty much it. And what if I want to publish my results? Get that idea out of your head for now. There is a lot that goes into publishing. I will contend to that. It is a lot of work to get your skills up to a point where publishing is effective, I would say, and worth it. But yeah, so if you're starting off for writing a setting for the first time, I would give it a couple of goes first. Try to build on your skills for publishing. So let's see, do I need to read the article? Let's just continue on to the first week. Okay, concept. So whenever I was writing Astalia, or started writing Astalia, I started making 7 main ideas in which I wanted to make my world about. And so step 1 is something you do in your head. Now, fantasy swords and sorcery games need not have any fixed basis for their assumptions made by its referee. My own doesn't, except those which embrace whole of fantasy. This sort of campaign can mix any and all of the various bases, which will be mentioned below, and then some. Settings based upon limits, if one can speak of fantasy limits, can be very interesting in themselves, providing the scope of the setting will allow the players relative free reign to their imaginations. Okay, and that's a quote by GG. So let's start getting our tasks done. Task number 1, get/create a notebook. Okay, well, you know, I got paper, so I guess I'll get several pages of paper. There we go. Done. Get a fancy notebook. Seriously, something that works for you. Some fancy and humble. You know what? This works fine. I don't need a lot. I am a simple man with simple needs, and just a pile of loose leaf paper that is blue is all I need. Okay. Check. Boom. Step number 2. Write down 3 to 7 well-crafted bullet points that will both communicate and sell the world to your players. Each bullet point should be concise and focused. A few clear sentences is plenty. Emphasize the most essential bits for establishing excitement, expectations, and tone. Your pitch will give players an idea of what they can expect to find or not find in your setting, and will help them create suitable character concepts. This is possibly one of the harder things in order to get, I don't want to say correct, but to optimize. Basically what we're going to do is that we're going to make 3 to 7 bullet points of concise information that is going to sell, and trying to word things in a way that excite people or give people a really good idea of what it is that our setting is about. And so, but before I continue on with reading those things, I do want to say that the next point is actually rather important, because we're going to want to draw upon ideas that already exist or examples of things that are out there, so that we can create these bullet points with a little bit more ease by having some sort of point of reference. And so the next task is to gather your sources of inspiration, list them, and provide a sentence or 2 explaining what each source brings to the setting. Hold your list so that it has no more than 7 entries. This can be tough, but I think it's important to focus ideas you aren't getting dragged into many directions at first. Make sure the sources are referenced by your pitch points in some way. Sources are for you. You don't have to share them with players, and players shouldn't have to be familiar with them. In fact, Gygax wouldn't tell you. In fact, Gygax would tell you not to share them, as they might spoil some of the surprises for players, or players might expect you to use parts of them you don't intend to use. Let's see, what's the extra credit? Assemble a mood board and practice your pitch. Okay, I do like mood boards. I actually do use that quite a lot whenever I'm making something completely new. But we'll start from the start. So we're going to develop 3 to 7 well-crafted bullet points that each communicate and sell our world to our players. So let's start with that. Okay. So I have made a Obsidian page that I'm going to use. Oops, did that not work? Ah, there we go. It works. Oh, you can't really see it too well, can you? All right, no, that's fine. So now with this, task number 1. Create 7. Well, 3 to 7, right? Let's see. Create 3 to 7 well-crafted bullet points about my set. Great. Perfect. Okay. So we'll start from the very, very beginning with number 1. All right, so what I haven't done any preparation for this at all, so all of this is just going to come completely at random. But if I were to make a completely different setting than what I have done before, that I've never ever done, I probably would start mixing a bunch of ideas that I probably have not seen together. I'm definitely a person that doesn't like using cliche fantasy. Sorry, I I know a lot of people love stuff like Lord of the Rings, and I think Lord of the Rings is pretty good. But I'm definitely more of a fan of, like, they call it high fantasy or alternative fantasy, where it is a mix and match of different ideas that maybe you wouldn't normally see, and then putting it together and seeing how it works. And so you're going to see a lot of that with Astalia. It's going to have a lot of ideas that are just mashed together, and and it works. But I have went ahead and I just picked out a bunch of sources from my big wall of books that are behind me, and so I'm going to use these as the resources or the sources of what I'm going to make my adventure from. And so I'm going to start with my second task, which is task compile a set of sources. All right, I think it's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, it's 4. All right, so the first source that I pulled out of my wall is Spelljammer. Not the Spelljammer that you know now, but the actual AD&D second edition, or second D&D second edition version of it. I really love the Spelljammer series. In fact, the first stream that I started on the channel was a Spelljammer adventure, Astral Adventures one. And gosh, it's been forever since that time. But I pulled a lot of the lore from this book itself, and so I read it through, and there is an immense amount of lore and information that you really just don't see in today's 5e's version. They had cut out a lot, and I can understand why. I mean, the lore in here is so infinitely complex, but it is something that I use a lot, especially whenever I'm trying to put Spelljammer into any of my games, or running a Spelljammer setting at all. Definitely recommend this. It is, it doesn't give me a total page count, but it's a combination of several books put together, so I'm not sure entirely what the full page count is. Let me see if there is on the front. Well, yeah, so it's several books, so I really don't know how many pages it is, because the table of contents doesn't really help, because it only lists the table of contents for the first book, but there's like 3 or 4 books put together right in this one. But I'm gonna put down the Spelljammer, AD&D second edition Spelljammer, so AD&D. Second edition Spelljammer, and I'm gonna write why it is that I'm using this. So I really like the intricacy of how the various civilizations interact with each other, but also this very aggressive and romantic atmosphere that is created. It's very scientific. It's also scientific in a magical way. And so what I'm going to write down in this is I think that my biggest idea is going to be the romanticized arcane magic in space with many societies clashing. Cool. That's going to be the biggest thing that I'm going to draw from that. So I'll put that one to the side. So the second one, the second source that I have here is Indigo Isles. I do love the Indigo Isles immensely, actually. And I recently was running a campaign on Fridays. However, I had to stop running that second campaign because I needed to focus more on other things, and I just couldn't put the attention into it as I wanted to. So I will come back to it eventually to finish the Jewel of the Indigo Isles, but the Indigo Isles campaign setting is definitely a good and favorite one that I love. And I think that a lot of that care really comes from, I ran a Dungeons and Dragons game back a long time ago for like about 3 years. It was a level 0 to level 1 adventure, so you're basically playing your character's backstory. They were level 0 for 3 years, and it was on an island, and it was with a bunch of animals, and it was really crazy and really goofy, but also really serious at the same time, and very tragic as well. And so the Indigo Isles kind of closely relates to that setting, and so I think whenever I saw it, it just kind of really struck a very personal chord with me. And so yeah, for that reason, I think that's why I love it so much. It just really encapsulates my personality in one book. And so I'll put the Indigo Isles setting guide. Okay. And I think the thing that I am going to be pulling a lot from that is the very, very happy and tropical, goofy, crazy, but also contrasted with very dark adventures and lots of secrets to explore. All right, so that's the Indigo Isles. The next one is going to be very different from the other two. And so I bought a Fallout 4 Vault Dwellers Survival Guide, the collector's edition. And so I really do like the Fallout series a lot. I had referenced the Fallout series a lot in many of my campaigns. I think I've referenced Fallout in just about every campaign that I've ever made. Some a little bit more heavily than others. But there are a lot of really great story elements that Bethesda really puts an immense amount into, and I've done a lot of level design study, story design study, character study, and also like community study of like why this game has been so great. And I've also looked into the history of the Fallout series from Fallout 1, 2, 3, all of those, New Vegas, of course. Played them, walked around in them, and really paid attention to the niche details of what is it that brings the Fallout series to life and to what it is today. And so I think adding Fallout to this list is going to be a little challenging, but we'll go with something like Fallout 4 Vault Dwellers Survival Guide. And I think the thing I want to really bring into it is this post-apocalyptic mystery of the past. Post-apocalyptic setting with lots of mystery and lore about the past, where adventures are like treasure digging, like archaeological things. There we go. Definitely spelled that wrong. There we go. Cool. And then the last thing I'm going to add to the list is, of course, Rappan Athuk. Rappan Athuk is possibly the hardest mega dungeon adventure that I've seen to date. A lot of what makes it difficult is its immense size, trying to add a lot onto what is almost not a complete blank slate, but there are a lot of missing parts that really just aren't really stitched together too well. It's also really, really massive and requires a lot of prep in order to enhance it to a much better level. I think whenever this was made, it was meant to be more ran in person, and I like to play online, and so it makes it a little bit more challenging. But you know, I definitely think that as challenging as it is, I really love it. It is definitely something that has pushed my skills, and for that, I really like it a lot. But for what I'm going to include in this is that I think the one defining factor that I'm really going to pull from Rappan Athuk for this list is going to be, I'm I mean, it's very dark and grim with a glimmer of hope. So let's go with that. Rappan Athuk, it's dark and grim with a glimmer of hope. All right. So just kind of pulling all those sources together, I'm going to start compiling my list here. So I'm going to create 3 to 7 well-crafted bullet points about my setting. So I think that the first thing that I kind of see here is, of course, it's going to be set in space. It'd be some sort of space setting that is post-apocalyptic, very happy and goofy, but yet also very dark and grim with a glimmer of hope. And so, let's see. So it is a space setting where all of the planets have been destroyed, and all that is left are the shards of the universe scattered across space. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Okay, so the second thing. I think we're gonna really need for there to be a way to travel around. Of course, we could go with the very stereotypical like Spelljammer ships, right? Which is very romanticized. But if we're gonna go with magic and a different way of transportation, with swimming, walking, running, thinking, teleportation. Let's see, movement around the universe is complicated. Is done so through major terminals, major gateways in the largest cities across the universe, and smaller, and travel to more local areas of space is done so through various means such as spaceships traveling on creatures, flying / walking / swimming, etc. So there's not like a single way. It really just depends on where you're at, because hey, the universe is big and there could be different things. So let's go with the next thing. So what is another point about this? There is a lot of sightseeing and traveling to see various sections of the universe for its color, culture, and feelings, which give the setting a very, very lighthearted and traveler romanticized feel. I don't know if if you guys have traveled very often or traveled at all. Going to a new location is honestly a lot of fun. I mean, like there is a lot to be said from. Oh wait, am I not connected anymore? Nope, I am here. Not sure what happened. That was weird. Okay. So I think, what was I saying? So there is a lot of feeling that going to someplace new really gives, and it's nice, like just being somewhere different than just the standard everyday scenes. There's this very good feeling about it. I can't quite explain it. I think there's a word for it, but that's the feel that I'm trying to go for with this third point. All right, so the fourth one. So even though there's all of this really great romanticized sightseeing, I think that there's also a lot of tragedy. I mean, there's literally no planets. I mean, everything's been blown apart, and so I think that contrasted to the very beautiful parts of the universe, there are many tragic areas as well that depict a darker, more grim past that shows the lack of hope for a better future and for a better future. I mean, it was an apocalypse. I mean, so yeah, you know, that's a very big dark thing to happen. So I think with that is, oh wait, no, one last thing. So there are many places to visit that are dangerous and full of adventure, lots of dungeons, lots of creatures to see, and many treasures that can be sought after and gained. Boom. And I think that's gonna be good. So I think that kind of gives a very good understanding of like what our world is going to be about, which is mostly a civilization traveling across the universe with lots of high moments and also the dark moments of what the world was before. All right, I would consider week 1 to be done, and we did it in less than a week. Let's continue on to the next part. So, okay, week 2, the surrounding area. So I'm gonna have to pick a spot in this universe for the campaign to start, right? And so, and this is how I, even before reading this book, I always start my campaigns when making a new one with the biggest details and then fine tune right to the smallest point where the adventure is going to start. Make that area as complete as I can, and the surrounding area, and also a place where they're going to go to their first quest for their adventure, to have a dungeon and a fight and a boss, and then, you know, from there they expand into a bigger story and move out. And so, and that's what we're going to see in these following weeks as well, is that it follows that guide. But we'll start here. So map the land around the dungeon and town. Gygax suggests sitting down with a large piece of hex-ruled paper and drawing a large-scale map. A map with a 1 hex equals 1 mile, with about the right for a player. So basically, we're going to make the whole area. So we're going to do task number 1, get a sheet of hex paper. So rather than doing that, I'm going to get a sheet of Photoshop paper and see how much we're going to make. So that. Go. I'm gonna make an artboard, and ta-da! You guys see that? I think you can. Perfect. Okay. So the first thing is task number 1 is done. Boom. We got our artboard to draw on. We're gonna make 1 large settlement. Define large however you like. 2 other settlements, camps, larger or smaller towns, a keep, 1 major terrain feature, covering the last 3 hexes, 1 mysterious site for exploration, 1 dungeon entrance at least, and we're going to key our map. Easiest way to do this is probably to number the hex rows and letter the columns, and so on and so on and so on. So, and he gives pimp your map. Stain it with coffee, burn the edges, love that. A random encounter table, and you know, we'll show an example of what it is that they have in this see that it's very cool, very well structured. How they have mountains, trying to create an area, a settlement, naming it, giving it characteristics. Though I think that is part 3 is to describe it more. Yes, no, it doesn't. So part 2 is really just making the terrain. It doesn't include anything about the description of the area, and then part 3 is making the dungeon. Okay, 4 is town features. So this puts a lot more focus into making the map for the town or the dungeon, whereas I would have started with the town and then made the surrounding area. But you know, working with the what we're given, we'll go ahead and do it the way that it's said here. So now the reason why I would make it with town and then going out is that the town has a lot of opportunity to create things like NPCs or very special niche things that you could put in there that could end up defining the outer area. But some people also can get inspiration from making the outer area first and then filling into the more niche and detailed things like the city. But we'll go ahead and do what the book says. We'll go with making a local area. Well, because my setting is more set in space, I know that it's going to be there's not really going to be a quote-unquote land, right? Everything is kind of broken up in chunks. So what I'm going to do is set my background color here, and boom. We're going to start formulating our different pieces of floating land. Now, what I've seen some people do is that they grab a handful of dice and they roll them onto the map, and the different types of dice and the different numbers that come up are what would be counted there. And so that is one method that I've seen people use. The method that I use is a little bit more random and sporadic, and I will say that whenever it comes to making areas, it isn't something that I spend a single day working on. And I know that's what I'm doing here, is trying to put it all into one day. But I get it from just ideas that I've had, putting them together, talking about them with others, watching videos, going on early morning runs, and getting an idea from that, from the adrenaline and the blood pumping to my head. And so that's my way of getting creative ideas and putting them down and seeing how they work. But if I was to just create something and go with it, let me think. So I'm going to start with making the I don't want to make it the capital because it'll be too big, but let's make it an outer settlement from a capital city. And if I was to make an adventure and a call to action for what the dungeon and the quest would be, I probably would start out with a very small outer settlement city that is big enough for there to be a gatehouse or a tavern, of course, with enough routinely coming through traffic. So it's maybe like one of those towns you kind of drive through as you're trying to get from one location to another. And I think that the adventure that they're going to go on is that there is some sort of disturbance that has worked its way far enough out that it's started to cause trouble where they're at. And it could be that there is maybe a local mining area or an excavation site, or maybe a group that collects treasures from these various worlds. But there's something that's preventing them from doing that. It's causing a lot of harm, and so it could have been a reawakening of what had destroyed everything before, which sounds like a great idea. We'll have to start with something small and something that has caused ripples out to where they are at, many more ways away. And so the reason I'm thinking about it like that is that whenever I make my adventures in general, I always try to have the adventure start in the middle of the story. Not so much in the center, but something had already been going on for a while. And the party is coming upon this effect after many events that already occurred before. So that way there's already some sort of established story to kind of pull off from. The party has the capability to alter the tides, and that way the BBG isn't so early in their development that they're easily tossed over, but neither are they so late that it's like inconsequential what it is that the players do. And so that's just how I like to create stories in general. But if we were to make an area that is kind of like a traveling in between major parts in space, I would imagine that there is landmass that is kind of like the equivalent of like a road stop. So we'll say that it's gonna look like this. I'm just putting a random blob. And I guess the whole point is that it's connected by like a series of to get from here to the next part of landmass. We'll see that everything is connected together by something that you probably wouldn't expect. So, and this is where I would kind of go back to my references again. What is it that I put? Spelljammer, Indigo Isles, Fallout 4. Crazy and goofy, but yet beautiful, dark. So, if the world is so torn apart, that means that gravity probably isn't entirely normalized throughout all of the universe or in space. So let's say that to get from here to the next landmass, they probably would have to travel by some sort of unconventional and weird way, but also kind of cool and beautiful. So I mean, we could go with water, we could go with light, we could go with air, steam, magic, transportation. I got it. So what if the way to get from here to maybe like somewhere way out over here is basically to get there via telephone poles. And so there could be like a house like here. There's like a house over here. And it's connected by a single line. And there's maybe something like, I don't know, like a television inside. There's a television inside. And you have to go into the television, then travel along this and come out the other side. I'm just pulling stuff out of my head here, but that sounds like something kind of cool. A different way of kind of going around rather than just walking or traveling. You're having to enter some sort of like cybernetic network that maybe has its own dangers, like computer viruses and whatnot. So yeah, we'll go with that. So that's how they're traveling around, and there is a series of these things, right? So we'll put multiple here. Actually have that one, this one be a little bit closer to the other one. There we go. It's gonna fill it in real nice. Okay, great. So now we'll have this last part be something that you have to go to by maybe it's connected by a bridge. Not even a legitimate one, maybe it's like a fallen tree or something. And as far as like a city, a large city, I mean, this right here already seems like a natural kind of like travel way. So it could be that people that are traveling on foot probably going through here. I love how it's looking. We're gonna use orange for the city color. So, and it's just going to be like a normal, what you would expect from a normal, like city as you're driving through like America. So it's got its, you know, McDonald's is right here. Boom. Let's see. Use yellow. There we go. I'll go with the McDonald's. Loving it. That's great. There is a... Oh no, there's a truck stop. Boom. Truck stop. Keeper truck stop. Right. And what else would you find? I mean, there's probably like a Denny's. Bam. And you know, like all the shops that you would find at a normal like truck stop station. Maybe there's just a lot of gas stations, just a lot of places to rest. Maybe there's a motel back here, a little shady, right? The shady motel. Boom. Motel. Right here. Great. And so this is where this is where the party is going to start. They maybe live here, they work here, they could be traveling through. Whatever it might be, they're going to be meeting at, I will say at McDonald's. Gotta give this place a name. I mean, it's some place that you don't really want to be. It's a place you end up whenever you need stuff. So we'll call it Needington, sure. Bam, there we go. Okay, so I think I established my first major task, which is to create a, oh wait, that's it. One large settlement, and that's pretty large. 2 other settlements, camps or smaller towns. Well, I think that there are probably that there's this outer place out here. It could be that there is a, we'll say that there's an actual like pond or a lake or something. Water could be like 10 feet above from where it probably would have been, so it's like a floating bubble of water. You can go fishing. Got a little fisher spot. Some fish. Okay, we'll use a different color. Got some fish there. A little fishy. And there we go. So that's one place, and we'll call it in the floating hole. We'll call it the floater. The floater's hole. There we go. Hey, kind of like the fishing hole, but instead of fishing, it's like floating because it's floating water. Very creative. So over here, I imagine maybe this is probably not a very popular area to go to. So we'll say that there is probably a faction of marauders or people that are just not wanting to be a part of society, quote unquote society. So this will be a little bit more of a tribal forest area. We'll put some. I guess those are teepees. Those are teepees. They are going to be. It's going to be a tribe village. Just, you know, barbarian. Grr, barbarians. What kind of barbarians are they? Oh gosh, yeah. What are the inhabitants like? Well, they're definitely not human. You know, they're barbarian cockroaches, cockroach barbarians. Because I would imagine that there's not many things that'll probably live in this post-apocalyptic state, but cockroaches would be one of them. And you know what? And they're angry. They're hissing cockroaches. All right. Hissing cockroaches, barbarians. There we go. There's a camp of them. They're not happy. We'll draw the cute little cockroaches as well. Let's see. They got they got 4 arms and hands on their hips, just like so. Grr. We give them eyes like this. They're unhappy. Why are they unhappy? Because they got no reason to be unhappy other than they're just unhappy. It's a born trait. Maybe their aggression is how they lived so long. Very aggressive, it's going to be a lot of hassle to try to go through this, because the place that we want to go to is right over here. And there is we'll say that it's a dungeon here. Boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. This is our dungeon. So what is it exactly? I would imagine that there's probably a great power source here. that the party's trying to get, because there is maybe some sort of fluctuation in the energies. I mean, these telephone poles have to get power from somewhere, right? And so it could be that because energy, maybe there was some sort of storage of energy somewhere, of electricity that maybe had gone down, that known about. It could have been this. Maybe this is the reason why travel across these power lines has been so unusual, and so people can't get back this way or this way. There would have been another line here, but where is it? There it is. And so they're entirely just stuck here. No one can get here, no one can get out, and they need to try to get the power back. Great. So call to action, hey, get the power back. We need to leave because something is going on. And so they have to try to get here. And so this is going to be a power plant. There we go. And because we want to kind of mix and mash things together, we're probably going to want to not just have this be any sort of power plant, right? Of course, nuclear works well. But let's try to use an alternative form of power, right? So what is something that is very easily probably messed up with? Probably solar power. It's a solar power plant. Solar and wind. We'll say solar and wind. We'll add it. We'll add a second thing in there. And so I guess that would mean that this whole thing is probably like a little bit desertish, most likely, instead of grassy. Which would make sense because you would have solar power more on a desert where there's lots and lots of sun and not really so much trees. I feel like there's something else we should probably add to this, but I'm not sure. I mean, if I want to go with a little bit of a study, I probably would add a bunch of fulgurite. So we'll add a bunch of glass shards that are here, maybe as a sort of like protective mountain around the desert. So it's really hard to get through because you got to climb a literal wall of glass to get in. Bam, there we go. Now that's a little bit interesting. Okay, so we've got 2 settlements. We made a settlement for fishing. That's probably where they go to get food, and there's probably some really weird fish there. Some angry roaches, and we have our dungeon over here. 1 mysterious site for exploration. Well, I mean, that is kind of mysterious in and of itself, isn't it? We'll add another one anyway. So if I have to add something mysterious, something unknown. That thing they normally find near a power plant. Like, I know like energy storage, but there's also something else. You know what? Maybe there's maybe there is this airport over here. And well, the thing about it is that because there's no more there's not much gravity or air, it just kind of seems unusual. It's kind of like, what are these weird machines that are here, and what is that? Like, what, you know, they probably don't even have blue skies in this setting. So this airport is just like really just a bunch of like, what the F is this? There we go. That's our mysterious spot. And that's it. We're done. And so it seems a little bit random, and I did it very quickly. But really there's already enough here to have a basis for something that could be unique. So from here, I probably would, over the next couple of days, weeks even, I would start to refine my mechanics of the world a little bit more. Because as you hear me talking, I'm talking about how there's no air, about how there's gravity is fluctuated and all over the place, things are destroyed, and also how this power system is fluctuated as well. And so there's clearly a very complex system of physics and mechanics that I would have to think about a lot. And so what I would do at this point is that I would probably sit down and I would read through my references, try to get ideas, So probably get the Fallout one, most likely, and just trying to get an idea of like, ooh, okay, I see they did this, I see they did that, I see that, I like how this looks. And what I am really doing in this period of kind of like refining is that I want to really put a lot of work into ambience, feeling, the what is the feeling that I'm supposed to be getting from it, and what am I putting into this creation of the world, and the very specific details that are going to drive that feeling out the most. And so like I know that I wrote down already over here, like I want it to be a space setting where everything's destroyed. Movement around is unusual, right? Which is why I have the telephone poles. A lot of sightseeing and traveling in various locations. It's a lot of color and culture that's kind of like mashed together, but also torn apart at the same time. And it's contrasted by these very dark areas where there was not a lot of hope, and maybe people had trouble surviving. Many places to visit that are dangerous and full of adventure. And so really kind of like what I'm getting here is I'm getting a mix and match of everything. Like if I was to grab everything on our planet of Earth, put it into a bag and just shake it up from all time periods across all of history, and just like pull random things out and just put it here, that's probably what I would do. And so I probably would be looking at things like, hey, like what is the history of some of the major civilizations in Africa or Australia or Thailand, or maybe looking at Spain, or just all these areas around the world that I can draw from random inspirations and just mash them together. And so like if I was to develop one part of it, let's start with the smallest parts are the ones that are easiest. And so this is a relatively small area, smaller than the other ones. And it's already got a set of people on there, which is the hissing cockroaches, right? So probably what I would start doing is that I would be looking at these hissing cockroaches and I'd be like, okay, like how is it that they have came about to be the way that they are? I would start to make some sort of basis of generalizations. Like, okay, like what are the possibilities? Clearly cockroaches don't get to be aggressive and big barbarians all on their own. There's something that maybe sparked it. Could have been, of course, pollution, radiation, magic. Of course, magic is a great reason as well. What kind of magic? We did the magic. Was it accidental? Was it on purpose? What about the people that were like, that did help these creatures awaken? Like, where are they now? And like, why aren't they here? Or if they are here, like, what are they doing? And so that's where I would really start asking myself a lot of questions. Who, what, where, why? Really start critically thinking and trying to get like these big details out and really being curious, because a lot of this is really just you digging down into the resources that you have and the things that you've kind of been experienced and exposed to, and trying to like put things together like, oh, this is like a really good contrasting idea, and always bringing that back to your main point of like, what is this setting supposed to be? And so this is where a lot of the biggest and hardest work is going to be formulated. Of you are trying to create something living and breathing, and whenever you start making your first setting, it's going to be very easy to kind of fall into the trap of also over making it. I know that even me just saying it, I'm probably saying a lot of things that would be categorized as like, this is a little bit too much. But even just painting broad strokes of history, if all I said was about these cockroaches, like, hey, they're going to be French. They're French cockroaches, and we'll say that they were magically awakened by grandma's space wizards. Why grandmas? I don't know. Maybe the grandmas had infatuation with them or something. Like, they just loved cockroaches for some reason. And it was completely on accident one night whenever they were just drunk, and it was a dare, like, I bet you can't awaken cockroaches. And then, maybe the cockroaches were awakened and killed and ate the grandmas. It was just random stuff like that. That's like, that's kind of interesting. But, people do weird stuff. And people of all ages and people of all kinds can get up to all sorts of unusual things. But also, whenever a lot of absurdity starts to get added, things that maybe aren't as believable as weird as that is to say for a fantasy setting. You also can lose your audience. So you've got to be careful, like what it is that you're adding and how unusually weird it is, because the weirder something is, or the weirder something kind of is from the norm of what people would expect, the more you really have to put an immense amount of work into crafting around that idea to make it fit. And it can be a lot of work. I will say that for the Astalia setting specifically, trying to craft a setting around some of the ideas that we made, which were quite literally randomly put together by dice, and which is what we were thinking at the time, is a challenge. And so if I were to make what I would suggest to you as someone that's going to be doing their campaign for the first time is start with what is familiar to you. Now, to me, I have always been a fan of the non-typical, of the non-mainstream way of fantasy. So for me, I loved stuff like Donkey Kong Country 2, like is a very big inspiration for me. Or like Banjo-Kazooie or Banjo-Tooie, if you guys have played those. Weirdly enough, you know, I'm only 31, but those are retro now. God, where the time goes. God, I'm not getting younger, am I? Anyway, I also had a lot of interest in things like, of course, like Fallout series. Surprisingly enough, did not like Skyrim as much as I thought I would. I think I liked it at first, but I definitely loved Morrowind a lot more. There was just something about the feel of it, felt a little bit more lived in, I guess is the best way I can put it. Anyway, beyond the point. I also really liked a lot of just really wacky and crazy movies and adventures. Like one of my favorite movies growing up was James and the Giant Peach. Watched that thing on repeat all the time. Also watched a lot of like stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh! And anyway, I can go on. But it would be just a bunch of really weird, unusual things that didn't really have a main connection, except for that they were just kind of different. And that's the best way I can put it. They were just different. And when I like look back at it now, and I look at how like I just made this whole setting, it kind of makes sense for how I just pulled something straight out of my head with telephone poles, hissing cockroaches, a solar power plant covered in fulgurite, a floating water hole, and I think it comes to no surprise to me that this is how my brain works. And if you watch my streams, you know that that's kind of how I operate best, is on the weird, unusual side. I think it's just a part of having ADHD. What can you do? Anyway, but the point that I'm trying to get across is work what works for you. Like, whatever excites you is really what's going to come through a lot with your world creation and to your players, because you really want to sell the feeling to the people that you're going to be running this for as much as you can. And if it's something that genuinely you just have a great amount of interest, even if it's like not mainstream fantasy, or if it is mainstream fantasy, that is completely fine too in and of itself. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Whatever it is, you know, you really gotta be sold to yourself on it. And if you're looking at it and you're just like, I'm not sure that I like it so much, that's a good point of introspection to kind of dig on. And really, I think what makes a big difference between good versus great, because I know great is what we want, is that you question yourself in this setting immensely. And you're also questioning like the interest of it, the fairness of it, like what is the drive of it, and you are okay with making revisions and be like, hey, you know, maybe this is not as good, and then going back and refining and editing. And if I had 1,000 hours, if I put 1,000 hours into this map setting, it probably would be a lot better than if I had just spent 1 to 10. And so what I'm trying to get at is that the amount of work you got to put in order to get from okay to good, maybe like, I don't know, like 100 times, but to get from good to great, it really takes like 1,000, 10,000 times the amount of work. And once you know how much work you need to get to the level of great, you realize that there's not many things that you have time for in this lifetime to make something of that caliber, because you need to put such an immense amount of time into skill, wisdom, getting the sources that you need, and the experience in order to craft something like I just did, just quickly, right? Whereas this would have been week 3, week 2, but I'm already talking about going even beyond that. I mean, I basically already made week 4 and week 5, which is just the descriptions of what is there. And so, take your time when you make your world, and I really would give yourself the whole 5 weeks, maybe more. You know, like starting out, whenever you put something out and it's out there on your sessions, it's out there, you know, and you definitely can recon and recall information, but I think it's better to try not to, like, live with the mistakes, like have the mistakes be part of the world at times. And there were times where I put stuff down like, oh god, I really should not have put this or that, but I went with it anyway. It ended up being okay, and you know, it turns out that my players your players are probably never gonna be as picky or as hard on you as you probably will on yourself, especially if you have a high standard for like excellence and like drive. And it can be hard, you know, sometimes to accept, like, you know, it's flawed, but it's okay to do things imperfectly. It's definitely okay to go forward with a story that is maybe not the greatest thing you could have made, but your players are loving it and you're having fun and they're having fun. Perfect. Now, if they're not having fun, well, then that would have to be looked at. Like, okay, like, what is it that didn't make it fun? And then trying to fix that and go forward. And that's where a lot of your mistakes will happen, and where you really got to sit down and be okay with the mistakes and know that it's a learning opportunity, and that this does take time. Because as much as I want to sit here and make this really, really weird and wacky world, I also know that myself, that when it comes to the general population, or whatever I'm going to be making this for, I can't really sell a massive, really weird, wacky adventure that makes absolutely no sense to thousands and thousands of people as someone that does this professionally now. But I could make something that is maybe, you know, a little bit adjacent, right? So if I made this maybe a little bit closer to general fantasy, and then also added the things that I added, but put them a little bit more together, then it would make a lot more sense, and it'd be a bit of a better sell. It's easier to try to convince people of a setting or an adventure that is something adjacent rather than completely just nuts and bolts out of nowhere. But even those things can find the proper audience, and a good example of that is the Rappan Athuk game that I have on Mondays, where it is almost kind of like nuts and bolts out of nowhere with the milk. It's just very weird and unusual, and I love it. And for that reason, I'm going to keep it, even if it's not what the main population wants. I'm having a good time, and that's all that matters. And the players are having a great time, and that's all that matters. At least to me, it's for me to have fun and not really care about what other people care about. But if you are if you are trying to create something for publication or for professionalism, then going something a little bit more standard is never wrong. But if you're just sitting through it and you're just like, I don't like it, it's okay to start over. There were a couple of campaigns that I could think of that I've just thrown it out because I'm like, no, this doesn't work. And it takes some refining and some exploration, and sometimes just playing in a world that's not perfect or your greatest what you would accept as, you know, what you would want, and just letting it go that, you know, it's just not going to be 100% perfect, and that's okay. You know, when it comes to playtesting is whenever you, and a lot of people do playtesting more than they think, but playtesting is whenever you create something and then you present it to people to be a part of it, and then you analyze how people interact with that thing that you created, that game, whether it's a video game, a board game, or a setting, or an adventure. And then based on how they interacted with it, you make changes to the adventure, to the environment, to the story, this or that, in order to fine-tune closer to the thing you're trying to get to. And so that is probably what you're going to be doing a lot. And so what I would do is that, in addition to creating this first campaign setting using the Gygax 75 challenge, the very first skill that I would recommend that any dungeon master look into is playtesting. What is playtesting? What is a good playtest? What are the things that you're looking for? How do you change, and how much do you change? And also, like, what do you include as the imperfect solutions to many problems? And so that is what's going to really drive a lot of, I would say, like, ingenuity to people's games. Try to include different solutions to problems that there are, or just trying to find a very unique solution that fits many problems, and then putting that out there and just running with it. But knowing how to implement new ideas into something that's already there and moderating it is a skill that any other skill, it's going to take work. And so, yes, world building is one skill. Playtesting is definitely a skill that I would recommend highly. Game development is also another one, but just as much as story writing and many of these other skills that we're going to be talking about for the next couple of months. But I digress. Let's get back to making this this map and this setting, so that way we are well on our way. I think that we just finished week 2. Let me see. So according to week 2, we needed to create 1 large settlement, 2 other settlements, 1 major terrain feature. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I guess we did that with the Gygax and the water. 1 mysterious site, 1 dungeon entrance. We're not going to key our map. This is a lot. There's also really no coordinates because there's really no true north. So we'll just kind of keep that to now. I really won't worry about the scale. Pimp our map. Create random encounters. I will skip those for now. Let's see. The dungeon. Okay. So, whenever you are... I'm a very strong believer that whenever you are making an adventure for the first time, there's not really much you need. All you need is a place for the party to meet, a dungeon with a quest and a call to action, and that's it. It's not much. And really, as far as a dungeon goes, you don't need much. I think you would at the very least, you would need 5 rooms. 1 is the entrance, 1 is the boss, and the middle are the 3 rooms you would have to travel between with a red herring. You can lead them in the wrong direction and then lead them in the correct direction. Finish the boss and then get back through, collect the reward, you're done. And that's a very, very simple and very cut down list of how to do a dungeon quest. But when we're talking about the dungeon, we're not just talking about the dungeon. We're talking about, like, what is not only in the dungeon, but how are you getting to the dungeon? Why are you going to the dungeon? What is it that's here? How is it that those people or factors or terrain or geography is interacting with each other? If you're wanting something a little bit more high level, you're definitely going to want to include this in various forms, or maybe it's not a typical thing that you would consider a dungeon. Maybe it's not necessarily a constructed building, but maybe something made out of something else, like a dragon, right? Like a dragon could be a dungeon, traveling around inside the dragon, or a giant whale, whatever it is. Again, you're going to want to reference what it is that your campaign or your setting is supposed to feel, right? And so the feeling, the brand, the idea that this is supposed to give to your players whenever they play in your world is what you're trying to make this for and about. And that could be hard sometimes. Not only that, but great level design and great dungeon work is an exceptionally hard skill as well. But we're not going to worry about that for now. It's going to be something for way later. So, we're gonna continue on with this. It says to describe the dungeon, the entrance to the dungeon, 7 to 10 words. Apologize, I didn't read the beginning. Let's start from the beginning. Week 3, the dungeon. Draw and stock 3 levels of your dungeon. Step 3 is very difficult and time consuming. Each level should have a central theme and some distinguishing features, i.e. a level with large open areas, swarming with goblins, one where the basic pattern of corridors seems to repeat endlessly, one inhabited by nothing but fire-dwelling or fire-using monsters, etc. As each level is finished, the various means of getting to lower levels must be keyed and noted on the appropriate lower levels. A careful plan of what monsters and treasures will be found here, found where on each level is also most necessary, and and can't take as long to prepare as the level itself. So, okay. So basically what we're making here is a multi-level dungeon with various themes. And I do like the fact that it adds the various themes in here. I probably wouldn't recommend it myself for the first dungeon, but basically what it's trying to get you to do is kind of like what I was describing before about these various different features, whether it's geography, level, features, etc., that you put together and you make it work. And so this is basically trying to do that process of gathering different ideas, put it together, and make it make sense somehow. And I like that they did it with 3 different levels. So it's as if, like, rather than trying to do it in 3 different rooms, which is a lot harder, having a whole level where you can put your ideas out on probably works well if you are a person that has a lot of ideas for what could possibly be in a water level or a fire level. If you're someone that maybe doesn't have as many ideas for what would be good for a room, then something a little bit smaller would hurt as well. Myself, I probably would make a singular or 2-story level where there's multiple creatures that are like almost like nearly on top of each other, but they're synergistically or not necessarily working against each other in any way. Anyway, I guess if I'm gonna go with that idea, we're gonna describe the entrance to the dungeon in 7 to 10 words, and tell a lot about a place by looking at its doors. So I said that this is our dungeon right here, right? The solar and wind power plant. What does a wind power plant look like? Pull it up. I mean, it's got a lot of turbines. Okay. This is a lot of turbines. Great. And energy is stored into all of these generation sources. Okay, but what about like a solar power plant? Well, okay, so there's all these, right, transformers, battery bank, and then transmission and tower lines. So overall, there's not a lot to work with in terms of like structure, right? So because everything is on the outside, it's very minimal in terms of cover. But if I was to make a dungeon, of course, I think there would be either some combination between, let's see, let me think. So the Fulgurite Mountains, Fulgurite is glass made out of sand from lightning, would suggest to me that there is a lot of storms. So great, storms. The fact that there's a lot of storms probably also means what did I just get a notification of? Oh, thank you for the hydrate. Hey Bobas, hope you're having a good one. So I think that the Fulgurite mixed with the storms is a lot of what's going to be the driving danger for what it is that the dungeon here is, because that would mean that the surface isn't very safe. So everything must be underground, right? Also, the fact that there's a lot of storms and in general just means that there's not a lot of sunlight because of all the clouds. So that's probably going to be a problem for the solar, but not so much for the wind, because then the wind could, from the storms, would generate a lot of electricity. Anyway, so I think because of all the fulgurite, I think that the norm is going to be that the wind the wind power is what's generating maybe like 99 to 100% of the electricity here. So I think the one thing that probably would make this unique is that there are no storms. The storms have stopped, and so because of that, there is no wind circulating, and the solar power is there, but there is no sunlight, or there's not enough sunlight to generate electricity. And so that is the problem of maybe what could be causing this power outage with these lines over here. So anyway, I'm just thinking of what it is the problem is ahead of time. But the whole point of this is I'm supposed to make the dungeon entrance. So clearly the party has to get over the fulgurite, which climbing on top of glass sounds dangerous and sharp. I'm not sure that I'm a big fan, but that seems like the way to get in. But then once on the desert itself, there probably is a lower civilization that is built out of what survives in the desert? Sandworms? One of these sandworms? Moles? Sandworms, moles. We'll say that it's giant beetles that have dug tunnels beneath this power plant. But they're not just any kind of beetles. They're probably like some sort of electric beetles, so that way we kind of stick with the electric theme of why they haven't died in all of this stormage. And so we'll have an underground interconnected series of tunnels that beetles have dug, and we'll say that they have like taken and moved pieces of like the various construction over their mass amount of years in the fulgurite, and we'll say that they maybe use the fulgurite to build their homes from. Okay, that's a lot. So right, let me start another artboard. Here. So I'm gonna have several ways to kind of like look at this. First, I'm gonna draw like a sideways view of it so that we can see the multiple levels, and then we're gonna draw a ground level, first level, and second level view. So now when I'm making these dungeons, you saw that I just started throwing ideas out like crazy, and sometimes honestly for me what helps is just having a person to talk to and be like just vomiting information at them and seeing what sticks and what excites me. And so there's a couple ideas here that I do like a lot that already excite me immensely. So I do like the fact that this is not any typical terrain. First off, we're gonna start with let's get this get some color here. Boom. Okay, so that is our desert. We're gonna make blue for the sky, because why not, right? So fulgurite, if you haven't seen fulgurite before, it's glass made out of lightning from sand, and so it's very weirdly shaped. And so we're gonna say that these are like very tall pillars of glass that are like on the outward side of the whole desert, right? And we'll say that there's fulgurite here and there. There we go. Bam, 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 bam. Of course, because there's turbines and such, we're gonna make our turbines. And also our solar power as well, right? That's not solar power. There we go. Nope. There we go. Great. But the main thing that I really am kind of like drawing in on here is that I need an entrance to my dungeon. And so beetles, and this is where a lot of, like in the previous lesson for DMing, I talked about studying a bit of everything. And so I've studied a lot of a lot of things. So I'm pulling this out just completely from research that I've done. But beetles, whenever they dig in the ground, they make these small holes, not like pits, but you know, they're very kind of like cicadas. Have you ever seen like cicada holes or like tarantula holes or beetle holes? They're very different. Beetle holes, they like have to scurry like this, and so they end up making like more diagonal sort of tunnels with a bit of a heap behind, because they're not exceptionally, because the way that they're shaped. So what I'm getting at is that there's going to be a large bump like this, and the beetles are going to be digging like so, and they like to make these like large areas like that. And a lot of this is, you know, eventually pushed out, but it almost like floods in a little bit. Whenever it rains, by the way, the reason why this is so important is because when water fills, it starts to fill up through the pipe as well, like this way, on the same level. And so trying to create this upward bump makes a bit of an air bubble, so then the beetles float like this. Like, help me, I don't want to drown. Or they, you know, they can climb on the surface too, but anyway. There's a bit of Animal 101 lesson for you. But you know, these tunnels also, because there's so many of them, so many beetles, we're gonna want to, I mean, a one room dungeon isn't really that fun. So we'll say that, you know, they could have created a complex, right? Of subterranean tunnels like this. I really just am pulling this out of nowhere. And so, and this is kind of more or less what I was kind of going for from the beginning. And I wasn't even really thinking about it, I just kind of naturally did it. So whenever I make a dungeon, I start with 5 rooms. I want one place to be my ending. I want one place to be a dead end. And I want 3 rooms that just kind of connect with each other. And so here is my dead end. Here's my place that I'm going to end up. Here's my 3 rooms that connect to each other, right? And so really the party, what they could do is that they can go here. And now they have a choice. They can either go this way, which is a very big area and it kind of seems foreboding, or they can go to the smaller spot. More often than not, party members will go to the smaller area because it seems easier, but it ends up just being a waste of time because there's nothing there, although it might seem like it. And so it's a good way to kind of like trick your party, like, haha, you know, psychology, you're gonna go to the smaller thing that's easier rather than the hard big thing. Not quote me on that. But then once they get to the dead end, they will make their way to the big open area, and there's a bit of a problem. They're gonna have to make a choice. There's a little bit of a choice between 2 paths they can go down, right? And no matter which way they go, they're gonna have to like end up at the other way, one way or the other. In fact, I probably would connect this here and not so much here. And so really what I'm doing with this dungeon is that I'm making a natural route that I'm wanting the party to more or less go down. I'm hiding this room in the middle of the tunnel because people do, I won't say that people don't expect there to be like shoot-offs from corridors, but if you do look at a lot of adventures, they will put a corridor branching off of a corridor and make it a secret. That's for secret. And so what makes it secret is that, you know, it's hard to see. Maybe there is some sort of mechanism there that is keeping it locked, and so the party has to go search for something to open it with. And that's good, because then you can force your party to kind of be a little bit more exploratory. And this kind of, you know, goes back to our fundamentals here. Anything that I add I want it to be reflective of the feel that I want to have for the game. You're gonna hear me say that a lot. I want the dungeon to feel what I'm trying to get, right? And so it is a very beautiful. I mean, the feel good ride can be very beautiful. The beetles in themselves don't even have to be aggressive, right? But what else is it about my setting that I could add, that I probably should add, is that it's also grim and tragic. And so I could also implement that in addition to these pathways that were made by the beetles, that there is a natural, maybe like bunker, like nuclear bunker, something, you know, like often there'll be like big underground facilities where you can go in case of a nuclear strike, go and hide, right? And maybe there could have been like a research facility as well. Or maybe there was like an underground monitoring area for all of this power, right? Maybe because of all the storage, maybe all of the storage for the power was underground, because maybe the storage were here before all of the post-apocalypse stuff. But what I'm trying to get at is that I need to create something that is going to give me a story, that I can make some sort of tragedy occur here, and having the party uncover what that tragedy was in order to give the feeling of, wow, you know, these people went through something and it sucks, because they had no hope and they didn't survive. And I think that, you know, if it was to be something like that, I probably would start thinking of like, okay, well, and if you don't know how to write a tragedy tale, how it works is that you essentially start with a figure that is got some sort of position of power, and they're well respected and renowned as a leader, that sorts. But they got a major flaw that ends up being their downfall. And because that flaw, not only do they end up, you know, really destroying themselves, but also everyone around them as well. And so that is the tale of a tragedy. And there's a lot of tragedies out there that, you know, that you can look at, which I would recommend looking at story types, because tragedy is one of those that just I really do like it a lot. And it really does give a very like earnest, like, oh man, that sucks, you know, I don't want that to happen to me. And there's this feeling whenever you get to the end of a tragedy, there's just like this release of like sadness, but you relate to it at the same time, because it could happen to anyone. It could happen to you. And it's just, I forget what the feeling is, but it's like this release of like stress and like happiness and like sadness at the same time. Anyway, but we're trying to go for the same thing here. And so I probably would make some sort of tale that relates to there being a tragedy for a group that maybe did have hope. There was a glimmer of hope, right? So all they had to do was hold out, because when the world exploded, they were just waiting for maybe the storms to like quiet down or something. But maybe the power went out, or maybe the power didn't generate for a while, and so they were trying to connect these things together. Something happened. Whatever it is, the party has to find out what it is that the story was in this dungeon. Have them interact with it, but having the key to open this door here be something that relates to the conclusion of whatever that story is. And so it almost necessitates that the party uncover fully what it is that happened and really discover the mystery. And if they fail, then, you know, probably ease it up on them. But, you know, but anyway, also, like, you know, you could just lead them as well. But that's neither here nor there. But the whole point is that this dungeon is not so much about the dungeon, it's the actual structure of the dungeon itself, but the story that happened here. And I would probably take a lot of inspiration from the Fallout series here, in that I would have the environment tell the story without words, positioning things in a very specific way, positioning bodies, bullet ammo, storage, things, the way the signs are written, maybe lack of signs, whatever it might be, in order to encapsulate the fine details of how people had lived in such a place. and that takes a lot of study. I'm talking about something very hard and advanced here, but this is where a lot of like making sure to like whenever you are doing your individual learning for your game mastering, that you are taking the time to really try to break things piece by piece and absorb it and try to understand it fully so that you can recall it just like that. So I think I pretty much got my dungeon. We're just gonna leave it at that. Let's write out what we gotta do. All right, so let's see. According to this, it says read the dungeon. Describe the entrance to the dungeon in 7 to 10 words. Okay. Task 1, entrance. So I think the entrance to our dungeon is that the entrance is a electric beetle tunnel that breaks into the roof of an underground bunker. The dungeon entrance isn't hard to get into, but getting out of the dungeon will be problematic, as the party will have to go through the roof. Yeah, I would imagine climbing out of a hole in the ceiling is going to be very very hard. So okay, boom. So task 2 is to create a point-to-point map. This is a simple map with circles. Okay, I already did that. I created my point-to-point map. You will draw 3 levels. I did. I'm going to say that I did. I mean, I'm not going to draw all 3, but that's enough levels for now. Include several ways up and down the level. Okay, so like if I'm going to include several ways up and down, right? So we're going to have to say that our ceiling is probably here. And if I'm going to include several ways up and down, I'm probably going to want things like ladders. We'll say that this is a ladder. Right? Maybe things like ropes. I think a lot of really what is here is that there's a lot of like one-way type of entrances, right? Like there's one way to get down, like this could be a slide, but there's not a way up, and so they're gonna at some point really get stuck. Okay, come up with one theme per level. Okay, so I was gonna come up with a theme for this, and I would say this would be like a bunker, right? Bunker. I would probably have this be like swampy, like a lake. On the right, maybe some sort of like fungal, like food, maybe like it's food, fungal food. And I'm gonna have this be like hidden hideout. And we'll say that the bunker is like half bunker, half like beetle eggs up here or something. Like beetle nests are really like up here. And so I kind of like have a bit of mix and mash of what is here. I mean, these could be like, I don't know, like tunnel, like escape tunnels? Corridors? We'll just say tunnels. Right, it's how they maneuvered between there and I guess the secret hideout. But I suppose that the major theme here is just that it's a mix between the beetles, the bunker, and what it is that each set of species had to survive with. So I said species as in like the beetles versus the people from a long time ago, and having their various different living areas be combined together into one dungeon. Make a list of about 12 iconic monsters and place them in rooms. Well, I mean, it'll be beetles, right? Okay. And I got to name like 3 items that would be here: a room, treasures, budget, details. This is gonna take, and it really will take an immense amount of time, so I don't want to do all of that right now. But you can already tell just by how fast I'm kind of moving through things that I am basically speed running, making a setting here, guys. Like, you know, it's hard. But this is a lot already in and of itself, and so I mean, already to get this far in what, like the hour and 45 minutes that I've been doing this is already a lot. There's already a lot of ideas that we can work with to make a real well-made dungeon. But I probably would spend like 2 or 3 days, 4 days most likely, fine-tuning everything on construction, not construction paper, on dungeon draft, Photoshop, making diagrams, looking at my game design stuff, and really fine-tuning what is that actually. Also, thank you for donating to the Milk Factory challenge. So here is the example of what they have in the book. That is it is a lot of detail. It really is. And so and honestly, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't agree with making a dungeon this big for your first dungeon. It really doesn't have to be this massive. 5 rooms is all you need. And I'll repeat it again. So all you need is you need an entrance, of course, a dead end, the final area that you want it to be. So that's 2, dead end and final area, and then 3 rooms that connect to each other, and then also connect to the dead end and the final area, and then that's your dungeon, and that's all you need. It's very simple. I think that a lot of people complicate it a little bit too much. And one of the best level designs would be the one that you go one way and then you end up back at the beginning again. If you look at Fallout 4 and Skyrim, they do that a lot, where you'll go into a dungeon and end up right back at the beginning of the dungeon, so you can easily exit again. Because trying to go all the way back a long empty tunnel is not really fun, and it won't be for the players either in any capacity. But make it simple. I mean, you don't have to make it 3 levels unless you really want to make an extremely long dungeon, but I don't recommend it. I think that, you know, nowadays people like roleplay and story a lot more than dungeon delving. Back in the day, with 1 and 2E, there was a lot of dungeons, and a lot of focus was, oh yeah, we're gonna go on an adventure, we're gonna fight things, we're gonna go room, we're gonna go hallway, we're gonna room, hallway. And you see that a lot with the Rappan Athuk book, made originally back in 3.5. It's a little bit more of the old school way of playing, which is, you know, we're gonna kick down a door, fight the monsters, get some, kick down a door, fight the monsters, get some loot. Not to say that there wasn't story, but it wasn't as much of a focus back then. Really, a lot of the cool things were focused around, hey, like, here's my character and this is what they can do. And 3.5 and 2 and 1 were very nitty gritty. Don't even get me started on Taco. But anyway, so this is kind of a lot. I mean, keep it in mind that this kind of recommendation is from a time period where dungeons were a lot of what we did. And so nowadays, I wouldn't really do that unless you're going to be playing with a lot of people that are like Gen X or, you know, or boomers. Then I would maybe, you know, for like an older crowd, I would make a giant dungeon because that's what they live and thrive on. But for someone that's more like in their 20s, mid 30s and younger, I would not make a giant dungeon adventure for them. But if you do, like, if you do end up running something like Rappan Athuk, right? The challenge is that you gotta make it fit for a modern audience. You gotta add a bunch of story there, but also make it worth their time to spend weeks, months in one spot. And that could be hard for some people to stay in one dungeon for that immense amount of time, unless the rooms are extremely small or there's just something captivating about the area. And creating captivating dungeons is extremely difficult, an extremely advanced level skill that I wouldn't recommend for beginners. So make it simple for your first dungeon. Don't go big and crazy, you know. Just create one simple dungeon, which is 5 rooms. Entrance, it doesn't count as a room, but you want the entrance, you want there to be a dead end, an ending spot, and 3 rooms that connect to each other, along with connecting to those 2 beginning areas, and that's it. And you'll be good, because that's all you need for a good dungeon to feel dungeony, because you want variance, but not too much variance, because then it'll be a lot of work. And then from there, then you can start, studying mega dungeons. I would study mega dungeons if you really want to make good dungeons, and understanding what it is that doesn't work, what it is that does work, and then really using that information along with your level design, research, and learning to make something really good and multi-level. But it is hard. It is not easy at all. Not easy at all. So there's a lot of details on what it is that each level does, and ta-da! We're done with week 3. Week 4. Town features. And so this is where I fundamentally disagree with the Gygax 75 challenge. I want to make the town first, because where is it that the party is going to start? In the town. I always try to start big broad strokes, and then get down to right where the party starts and go forward from there. But the town features are going to be things like lodgings, the equipment that they can buy there, what sort of society is there. I mean, I think that at this point, I probably really kind of did this, didn't I? Let's see. Find or sketch out a city map. Let's see. Did I do this? Needington is there. Look at the equipment list for your game. I want several shops. I guess that is a good idea. I'm gonna really need to fine tune what it is that my culture here is, the society, how it is that they interact with each other, what do they sell, why do they sell that, and really bringing to life what it is that my town does. And so, I know I'm talking about it vaguely here because this is a lot, but it does take a lot of work and a lot of time to put all that detail together onto paper and write it down. But I'm going to skip over to the last week, which is week 5, the larger world. So week 5 is to sketch out the bigger part of the continent, the land, the world, everything else that is around this, giving it names, how to get from one area to the other. And so that is the Gygax 75 challenge in less than 2 hours. I did not write a lot of that down. But I think that if I really started to get into the details here and you started to look at me just ooh, really fine tune things, that it would be a lot of me talking and being what's this guy talking about? But overall, it's still not a bad resource, even though I disagree with some parts of it. In the order that it was put, it's not necessarily bad. I mean, if you do the dungeon before the town, it's at the end of the world. But I do think that small dungeon probably works out better for a first dungeon. And definitely giving yourself lots of room and lots of time to think things through, have your resources, read them through, and get the proper inspiration, and ask yourself the who, what, when, where, why questions. Study level design, study the how to play test, and go with it. Your first campaign, your first adventure is not going to be perfect, and that's okay. I don't think that we're going to want it to be. But definitely giving yourself lots of space and time, think it through and think things and write things down and give yourself, this is supposed to be done over a course of 35 days and I did it in 2 hours. So it's like whenever, if you guys have seen the meme of hey, here is an image that takes an hour to draw versus 10 minutes versus 1 minute. I basically did the 1 minute version of what's take 5 weeks. It doesn't look great. Of course, it's not going to look great. I made it in 2 hours as opposed to 35 days. But this kind of gives you an idea of what to do for a homebrew setting. So all of that, let me just wrap this up with, okay, so what are some tips that I would give that maybe are not mentioned? Of course, number 1, small dungeon. Number 2, stick to what is most familiar to you. Now, because the reason being is that if you're going to make something that you don't know, you have to spend all that time now researching stuff that you don't know. So it's a lot better to create from things that you already know presently. Add one major part of the world that you don't know something about, and then incorporate that as part of your learning. And every time that you go back to create something new, repeat that process. Maybe I don't know anything about nuclear physics. And so because this is, you know, like a Fallout 4 related setting, I'm gonna have to go study a lot of nuclear stuff and how that works, and then incorporate that and have that be my one thing. Or maybe I don't know a lot about insect behavior like cockroaches and beetles, so that'll be my one thing that I have to research, right? But maybe I already knew everything else, and that's fine. But whatever it is, add one major element that is not something you know, because you want to start adding a lot of knowledge to your just base repertoire of things to pull from, so that whenever you have to drop things on the fly, you're ready. The third thing that I would definitely hit on a lot is making sure to incorporate a generalized story. It wasn't included in here, weirdly enough. It didn't talk about the story as much. Like, there was no quest. Incorporate a quest. You're gonna need not only a dungeon, not only a world, but you're gonna need a call to action of why it is the party should care to go to this dang adventure anyways to begin with, right? I could have a dungeon, I could have a town. What's going to connect them together? And so that's the part that I think is going to need like a little bit of thinking of, like, how do I get from point A to point B? Why should the party care about that? And also, where do I go to from there? Having a general skeleton of a major storyline that you want to key in on is great. And I would definitely recommend starting in the middle of a story, not at the beginning. And the reason for that being that whenever you're at a beginning of a BBEG's rise to power, that is whenever they're the most vulnerable to be killed, and the party will probably kill them if you give them a chance to. I've had that happen to me twice. I didn't learn my first time apparently, and I'm like, okay, great, the campaign's over. You know, don't let that happen to you. Don't let the campaign be over in less than 5 minutes, 10 minutes, because they had an access to the BBEG before they got powerful. Have it happen when they've already started the rise to power. They already got the fences. They already got the things that they have, so that the party has something visual to cue in on for their challenge of what they're trying to overcome, and the challenges that come with that. So start in the middle of a story, and if you want to have a shorter adventure, have the danger be closer to home than not. You want to have a longer adventure, have the party start in a very outer portion of the world where the influences of this BBEG is just barely starting to get there, whereas other places maybe have been like decimated for years, because then the party has to reach a longer distance, a path of destruction, to get to their BBEG. But if it's a little bit closer to home, then you have a shorter adventure. They're geographically, quite literally, physically closer, less probably a pool of influence. Thus, you know, they probably are earlier on, and that is, you know, essentially what I would say is the key map of, hey, this is how you can base how long your adventure is, whether it's 1 session, 2 sessions, or 10 years. And so that is it. There you go. I did today's stream in 2 hours. Yay. All right. Now I am here, clearly, but if anyone has any questions, I know that today has been a little bit of a quieter stream. I didn't promote the stream for today as much as I probably should have. Not that I didn't want people to be here. It's just one of those things that, you know, I'm just gonna let it speak for itself. They're on YouTube. I'm gonna make videos from it, and so I think having a quieter stream also kind of helps me formulate my thoughts as well. If it's as much writing or interruptions from like reading messages, it might not be as well thought or formulated. But if anyone has anything they want to ask, by all means, I am here. You can ask me anything. Otherwise, let me go ahead and switch the stream back over to the just me portion. Boop. Perfect. So, if you have been watching the stream, you see that there is a weekly promo right here. Right there. That's been cycling images of what there is going on at the moment. Rappan Athuk is tomorrow evening, so definitely come and watch that. There is a Tavern Talk later today where myself, Ramshackle from Legends of Logomancy, Gemma Revan, and Niji, we're all professional TTRPGers. We're going to be having a monthly discussion talking about rules, the nuances and limitations and liberties that rules provide. And there's going to be a lot to talk about in terms of that. Let's see. Other than that, the playtests start this week. If you want to take part of the playtest, you can sign up, join the Discord. I'll put the Discord link here. Bam. There we go. And you can look at the information. You can message me directly. Other than that, I don't have much else to talk about. Okay, that was fairly quick. And so next week I will be going over the next lesson, which is going to be Mastery Part 1, which is going to incorporate how you can start to develop your skills in the most accelerated, optimal way. And that's not something that is just for dungeon mastering, but it could be for anything. But specifically, it is going to be entailed around dungeon mastering in and of itself. Focus. So that'll be next week on Sunday. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, then please feel free to message me. You can email me. You can send me a message on Discord. Whatever. I'm very easy to reach. Very easy to find. Although sometimes it might take me a bit to get back to you guys. Definitely keep the Patreon a look. I have updated it so that way it's a lot more closer tuned to what it is that I do now. So what I do now is I'm running a lot more games from stuff that I make. And so then I'm also having those be published with a new adventure every month. And so this month I am publishing Gob's Petulance, and I'm also streaming that on Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And so if you join the Patreon, you get a copy of that adventure, and you can also play in the adventure as well and get the copy of it in addition to that. And so it's relatively cheap compared to what people would pay overall for professional GMing. It's what, like $36, which is $12 per session, right? Versus 20. Way cheaper. Way cheaper. So I try to make things cheap but also available for you guys. And so it's going to be I say a lot of work. It's pretty much what I do on a weekly basis, so it's not going to be as much for me, but I'm going to start being a lot more attuned to making adventures, publishing them, writing, publishing, and that's a lot what I'm going to be doing from now on, which is kind of I don't want to say is it a major change? I think it's a major change from the like streamer entertainment viewership that I've done before, from like Dream Team, Astral Adventures, to Florida Simulator, to Rappan Athuk and Indigo Isles, me only having one game that I stream for entertainment, and then the rest being education and the things that I make so that you all can see a preview of what it is that's going on up here, all the crazy nonsense that is there, making high quality adventures, including the maps and the PDFs for you to have and purchase as well. But definitely every little bit of support that goes through Patreon helps in making the adventures a lot more visually appealing. I will say that one of the biggest time sinks for me has been making the art. Not to say that I can't make art, but it just requires an immense amount of dedication to make really good art, because I don't like using AI art for published work. I will use it for just quick stuff if I have to, but I prefer not to if I have a choice, but it just takes a long time to make. And so supporting on Patreon would help me to pay someone else to do it and make the adventures that much better. But also understandable, it is very new, and so if you want to wait a month or two, you could follow as a free member. Just wait to see, hey, like, I want to make sure like this guy's quality stuff is good, which I got you, fam. I'm not going to disappoint because this is what I've been doing for a long time. So with that said, I'm going to end the stream here. I hope to see you guys in the Discord, see you in the Patreon. Follow us on Twitch, on YouTube. Want to subscribe? Hey, you know, that's great. It'll throw a couple of more bucks my way. Otherwise, I will see you all this afternoon. There's not many of us here, so I'm not going to do a raid, but hope you guys have a wonderful day.